What's going on, guys? Bart here with Tully Television. Welcome back. I hope that today is the day that I earn that subscription from you. Smash that like button, leave a comment, share, all that beautiful stuff down below. But before we get into what we're getting into, I want you to tell me what your favorite part of The Last of Us has been up until now. We're going to get into the season finale. We're going to get into my thoughts of the season in a general sense and my thoughts into where season 2 might be going. Let's get right into it. The Last of Us, the season finale, episode 9, Look for the Light. Of course, by Neil Druckmann, Craig Mazin, Pedro Pascal as Joel, Bella Ramsey as Ellie, and Merle Dandridge as Marlene. Those were primarily the main characters in this episode. We pick up basically with Joel and Ellie at their final destination to meet with the Fireflies so they can figure out what to do with Ellie's blood in order to save the rest of the world. As they're going, we see Elle being very quiet, very reserved, not the goofy, smiley girl who loves making puns and trying to crack a smile out of you. She's obviously very down, very within her own thoughts. We hear Joel trying to call for her, but she's just so distant and disassociated about how she had to survive the end of the last episode that I feel it took a piece out of her. That last piece of innocence that she had, I think, is gone now, and I think she's officially moved into adulthood in her brain. But at some point, her and Joel sit down, and Joel tries to explain that after his daughter had passed away at the beginning of this whole ordeal, he tried to Minecraft himself, but was unsuccessful, and he was grateful that it was an unsuccessful attempt. He happened to flinch at the last minute, and Ellie had said something like, "Oh, I get it, time heals all wounds," and he was like, "No, not time," and he looks at her, and she gets what he's meaning, and she understands that it's basically love and companionship that can help your bitterness and your loneliness to maybe not go away, but to dissolve enough so you can let this ray of sunshine into your life. Which he has. It's took nearly 20 years, but Joel has finally went from just looking at this as a mission just to garner some extra tickets or extra favors with the guards or what have you. He has took purpose in protecting Ellie from the rest of the world. He has become a father again by the end of this season. We finally get to where the area is that they're supposed to be at, and a couple minutes of being there, a concussion blast goes off near them. You see Joel trying to protect Ellie from the blast. They both get knocked out and captured, and Joel happens to wake up sometime later, waking up to Marlene. They're at the Fireflies headquarters. She says that Ellie is okay. She says he's okay. They just needed to make sure that the headquarters was not seen, of wherever, the hospital. it just was basically easier for her to do this. She said that it took her way longer and more men. She said she had 5 men protecting her during the whole trek cross country, and they all died. She doesn't know how Joel and Ellie survived, and he had said it was Ellie and her motivation, her drive that drove them to get this far. And basically, he asked to see Ellie, and this is when the hit starts hitting the fan, so to speak, because she starts explaining that in order to gain the access to the cure, Ellie has to go through surgery to collect cordyceps. And Joel was like, well, the cordyceps are stored in the brain. Like, what are we talking about here? And as soon as he realizes that in order for Ellie to save the world, she's going to have to die in order to reach basically the antidote for everybody else. And that is not good for him. So we see him being led out of the hospital by the Fireflies, and this is when he goes to town on the whole group that's in the hospital. He's taking people down, left, right, the other, not even knocking them out. He's blasting his way through Ellie, and then at some point he makes it to the operating room where they're about to operate on Ellie, and the doctor's like, I'm not letting you, and boom, Joel just drops him right there, and he's like, unhook her, and they unhook her, and as he's carrying her out of the hospital, reminds me of how he was carrying his daughter in the beginning of episode 1, when basically at the beginning of this whole thing, his life had ended the day his daughter had died in his arms. But now, 20 some odd years later, his life begins by carrying a child in his arms that is full of life. So I thought that was a pretty interesting mirroring of each other. The last time he basically held the child that he cared, his life had ended, but now that the next time he's carrying the child that he loves, his life is beginning. So he realizes that this is his purpose, to protect Ellie, despite the fact that when him and Marlene approaches him before he leaves officially, they have this moral debate on whether it's right for Joel to take her without having her make the choice. But Marlene didn't give her the choice either. The Fireflies didn't give her a choice. They didn't tell her exactly what she had to do because they were also afraid of her response. They were afraid she was going to reject it, and Joel's afraid she's going to do it. And knowing Ellie and her wanting to save everyone, she is going to wind up doing it. And Joel took Marlene out because he said that you're just going to keep chasing after her, and I can't have that. So he takes her out. And Ellie was kind of knocked out during this whole thing. And so when they go back to Tommy's community that we've seen in episode 6 or 7, we see her coming to a little bit and asking what happened. And he lies to her, saying that they couldn't find a cure, that there were other people like her that they just could not figure out a cure. And that raiders came and killed all the Fireflies, and now they're going back to Tommy's community. And a part of her seems to not believe that, but near the end of the episode, she asks Joel face to face, eye to eye, is what you told me at the hospital true? And he, without breaking a sweat, without blinking, without any of that, a stutter, nothing, he's like, yes, everything I told you is true. Now, obviously, as we all know how entertainment shows, movies, all these things work, songs that are trying to tell a story, that she's going to eventually find out. In The Last of Us 2, she does find out at some point that Joel did lie to her about what happened, because Ellie becomes complacent about her role in life, feeling like she was meant for something greater, and now just basically doing mundane jobs, which there's nothing about living a mundane life, but if you were hyped up to believe that you were some sort of savior, bagging groceries at ShopRite isn't going to sit well with you afterwards or anything like that. But that's basically how the episode ends. Joe lies to her, like confirming his lie to her, even though she's basically gave him an out there to say, is that really what happened? And he went with it because he is not willing to lose his humanity again through the loss of Ellie, even if it's meant to save the rest of the world. Damn be the world for my daughter to die, and that's how I would feel in a way. I just might give the world a condemnation just to save my daughter. I might just make that decision. I don't know. I have a kid myself, a son, and if my son was put in that position of either having to save the world by dying or living, and then the world goes to shit, well, I guess the world is going to shit. What did the world do for Joel after his daughter died in this, and he owes the world anything? I don't know. That's just my view. May feel a little nihilist, so to speak. But I get the thing from a parent's perspective. I do think, excuse me, I do think that in season 2 we're going to see her come close to the truth. I don't think that season 2 is going to be a direct. I think we're going to get like 3 to 5 seasons out of the show, possibly, if they can drag it out, stretch. Because in the second game, it's a 5-year jump. So you could leave seasons 2 and 3 and 4 kind of like a year round, and then by the time season 5 comes, you could maybe then just, send off. And, I don't want to say how that game goes, but, I thought that this season was great. I do understand people who are fans of the game, why they may not have liked this series. I, too, have been a fan of stuff for a very long time, since its inception. And then to see changes and this and that take place in it aggravate me as well. I happen to be on the other end of this, where I am aware of The Last of Us. I played the games, but I was not like, oh, Last of Us, this is the greatest, and I became a mega stan over it. And then the show came, and I'm like, oh, what happened? And my face melts, I've done that for a few properties in private, but I really try to, when I review things, try to go into it objectively and explain why I didn't like certain parts of the show and stuff like that. But taking this show as a whole, I enjoyed it. Yes, there were some slow times. There were some over-the-top comments that I kind of could have did without, for sure. I wasn't a fan of every episode. You can go back and check out my playlist of this series. But I do think that in a general sense, this was one of the better episodes, if not the best episode. That whole thing that Joel did going through the hospital was amazing. And I think that this show, as in a general sense, can definitely get like a B plus, A minus range, and I would suggest it. Again, I understand if you don't like it, it's okay. But I thought that this show is pretty decent, and I can't wait for season 2. That's my thoughts of The Last of Us television show on HBO Max. You let me know how you thought it was, and until next time, peace, Snookums.